Failure is something that everybody loves to talk about and everybody hates to talk about because failure is personal and it's professional and it's very uncomfortable. And when I first started thinking about this talk, which was back in October, actually at Web Design Day, yeah, Val and Jason are here, awesome. With Kate, I was at the end of a 12-year career with an organization here in town, and I couldn't get over the fact that the 12 years I'd spent there was such a growing up period. And when you think about it, you spend 12 years from kindergarten to your senior year of high school. And at the time, when you're transitioning out of a job, and especially such a long career, you have all this clarity to see everything that's wrong with everything. And at the time, I was like high on this. I was like, oh, well, if everybody had been just as brave as I am, as articulate as I can be, and as forthright as needed, when you're managing a project and you see it coming down and you see the train coming toward the other train, if only people had talked about that. But then I changed careers, and it was really a comeuppance for me. It was an awakening. And what I do in my life is I take times from my childhood and frame them into my adult life. And I have something called the piano recital in my life. And that's the thing that I have to do before I can have fun. Because the piano recital always happened like in May, right before summer vacation. So all spring I would have this anxiety about the piano recital. And then finally the piano recital would happen and it wouldn't suck, and I would be able to enjoy my summer. And the other thing in my life that I use to frame that is the home perm. Now, when I was in 5th grade, I wanted a perm. And I've got, brown, mousy, thin hair, but my friends were getting beautiful salon perms. And I talked to my mom into going to the Rite Aid and buying a rave home perm. And at the time, I had a Kodak disc camera. I'm wondering if anyone remembers these. Oh, they're fantastic. And I got it for Christmas the year before, so I was documenting my life with this disc camera. I have pictures of my sister holding a cat while my mom cooks eggs, or my brother with his new Y-wing starfighter that he got. So naturally, we documented my perm. And because I keep everything, and I'm a terrible pack rat, I have the photo essay from my home perm. And here I am reading the instructions, and my mom has mixed up the chemicals. You'll see those there, and I'm wearing my dad's old shirt, and things started out okay. When you get the first rods in place, everything's fine, but after a while, it's tight. Anybody who's ever had some serious hair work done, it's pretty uncomfortable. So, whether you're in a salon or your dining room, it's gonna feel like this. But I was okay after a while. And after all the rods were in place and the chemicals squeezed on, and my mom tied the little bag up there, I called my friends to tell them how beautiful I was going to be. So then after about, I think it's like 45 minutes, that stuff has to cook on your head. We started to take out the rods, and of course it was kind of tight, but it was looking good. I knew that it was going to be fine, and my mom suggested that we blow dry it, and that's when everything went to hell. So, of course, I'm like 11, and I look like this, and I'm sobbing. I mean, it's probably not just the hair that should make me sob. And so I remember staring in the mirror, wondering if I could use that bandana as a babushka to hide this the next day at school. So I continued to sob, and of course my parents continued to take these pictures. So, and I'm very thankful to them for that. But And then I eventually cried myself to sleep among my stuffed animals. But it was the first time that I remember being fully accountable for something. There was no way that I could blame anybody else for my home farm. Yeah, my mom took me to Rite Aid and she put on the rods, but it was my fault. I couldn't get out of it. There was nobody else that I could look to. So, being in 5th grade and even now not being in 5th grade, I look to a lot of, childhood heroes. And my childhood heroes are from books. And, childhood is this like swirling cesspool of mistakes and blame. And there's characters in these books that we live with and learn from. And a few come to mind when it comes to failure. I don't know if you guys know this guy. It's Alexander, who has a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. But Alexander's plight is something where, he feels like he's out of control of it. He doesn't have a dessert, and he messes up stuff at his dad's office, and he has to wear his railroad train pajamas, and there's kissing on TV, and he hates kissing on TV. So, but his parents assure him that, everyone has days like this, even in Australia, because he's threatening to move to Australia during the entire book. And then this precious child, who is my heroine, Ramona Quimby. She's the poster child of misunderstanding and temptation. And she knows what she's doing. She touches Susan's hair. If you remember in some of the books, I hope you've read it. If you haven't, I actually have Ramona the Pest over here. But she has this classmate who has got beautiful golden ringlets. And she cannot help but touch the ringlet every day, and her parents get mad at her, and her teacher gets mad at her, but she cannot help herself. And she's also the queen of taking things literally. A beautiful story that actually takes place in Ramona the Pest. She goes to school on the first day and sings the Star-Spangled Banner with her class, and she is convinced that a lamp is called a donzer because of the donzerly light in the song. And then we have our pensive hedgehog, Frances. She's tricked by a friend, ridiculed by her baby sister, and basically makes a really bad investment on a tea set. And, Frances is different because Frances is aware of her actions, but then decides to do something about it. Which is why, there's this progression in these stories, and I see it as these 3 different steps. Alexander, he's the victim in this story, or at least in his mind, and he only threatens to move away, threatens to run away from the failure. But Ramona is fully aware of what she does, and as Beverly Cleary calls it, her wickedness. And she loves it because she's so indignant, and she wants to be good, but she also loves being bad. She loves the energy that comes from it. And then there's Frances, and she totally screwed up. She tries to rationalize what she did, and then she devises a solution for it. And I won't spoil the end, but I also have that book over here if you'd like to read it. So, in light of this, there's a couple of points after you go through these different phases of the failure. There's the anticipation of it. And, it's almost part of the victim stage when you're at the what now, what can happen next. And when you know something's going to happen, there can be a lot of motivation in that and a lot of energy in that. But at the same time, it suffers from that Christmas morning syndrome as much as anything positive does, because the more you lie awake on Christmas Eve thinking about what's going to happen the next day and the glory you're going to experience, and you go downstairs and everything's sparkling and you open it up and it's like an E.T. latch hook pillow or, some weird puzzle toy, it never has the payoff that you dream that it's going to. And the same is true with failure. It's not always as terrible as you dream it's going to be, and you use that anticipation and take different experiences in your life to shape that. The other night I was watching the original Michael Keaton Batman, with my kids, I decided, okay, they can watch it. They're 6 and 8. I don't know if that's a bad decision. I don't know. We'll find out. But that scene where that hack doctor is taking the bandages off of the Joker and just slowly peeling it away and says, oh, look what I have to work with. And it's like this gross saw thing. Like, I found myself tensing up, and it wasn't because I was going to see Jack Nicholson's face all crazy. It was because I had seen a Twilight Zone episode like 25 years ago where there's these people that come out of surgery, and the doctors and nurses are talking about how disfigured these people are going to be, and they're peeling away these bandages. And then, of course, because it's the Twilight Zone, these people are exquisitely beautiful, and everyone else in the hospital and in the world is disfigured. And I realized that I was projecting that anticipation onto this, and my kids were sitting there unawares, not even thinking about it. But for me, I had taken that experience and expected something else. What happens next is the redemption. Now, when you're in the midst of failure, and I know that we've all been there, whether it's a terrible project, or it's a bad decision, a bad outfit, something that you have done, you have to own it. And both Ramona and Frances show this ownership, because the ownership gives us the power to change it. Because at the risk of sounding cliche, if you own the failure, it can't own you, because you are the bad guy. And I say that because my brother has this amazing way of thinking about fear, where if he's like turning off the lights downstairs and running up the stairs, in that situation, he's the bad guy. And when you're the bad guy, nobody else is the bad guy, and they can't get you. And so in team situations and in other situations, standing up and taking ownership shows more leadership than it does failure. And, it's when you're in a room of people talking about something that went to hell, and everybody's sitting there wondering who's going to speak up. The guy who speaks up is the one who immediately becomes the leader in that room. That's the person who everybody's going to look to guide them out of it and to find answers and to talk to the people above you about what went down. I remember when I was working at my previous job, I had a huge screw up, big enough that it cost the company a lot of money, because what I ended up doing is I did not take down a registration page for an event that had been canceled. And people bought tickets to this event, and people bought plane tickets to fly across the country to go to the event. And somebody ran a report and just like, oh, we've got registrations for this. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember going down and talking to the CIO about it. And I was free. Like, the moment I looked at her and I said, I really, really, really fucked this up. And I expected her to either punch me or, I didn't know what was going to happen. But she said, you know what I like about you, Kate? You always own it. And I was like, yeah, I own it. I own that. And I hope you can reimburse them. So back to the camera, that disc camera that was so special to me. Here's a picture of it, if anybody's seen it. And the coolest thing is, do you remember Viewmaster? This looked just like the Viewmaster slide. I found out that this was actually a huge failure for Kodak. And I didn't know that. My entire life, this had been their golden product to me. And they spent 10 years of research and development in this. And they introduced it in 1982 and pulled it by 88. So, it was only on the market for 6 years, but it was considered a failure because of relatively low sales for the Kodak company and really low fidelity. Because if you check this out, those negatives are about the size of your thumbnail compared to a 35 millimeter negative. And, it was a flop for Kodak, but it was a treasure to me, and it was a treasure to a lot of people. So, find your home perm and own it. And maybe your failure is somebody else's disc camera. So in the end, thank you so much. You guys are awesome.